everyone hear me okay? Yeah. You guys are kind. I do a round of applause. I didn't even do anything yet, so thank you. Nice group today. You may ask yourself, what does one need to do to become a moderator? And it's actually a career tip. What you do is you get to know Jack, then he asks you to coffee, then he says, I'd love your help on this Agile thing, and you accept. Then Jack figures out you actually don't know anything about it, and you end up as the moderator. As you get to know the group today, you'll see why that's true, so I'm happy to be here. What we're going to do today is go through and have each of our panelists introduce themselves. We're lucky to have each of them. In a minute, I'll have their Twitter handles up as well, so we encourage tweeting. Please try to include as much of them as possible. If you have follow-up questions, we will be around after, and we'd love to be helpful. So our goal today, first, where are my track 3 people? The Hershey people. Who was in track 3 just now? You need to share your candy. That's not fair. So you guys all got a bag of candy? Okay, the other people at your table, get candy from those people. You should have some. But our goal in the session is to give you the real-world take on Agile marketing, and to give you both a definition, some examples around it, and then I think we're actually, as we've talked as a group and got prepared for today, a few cautionary tales that may help you as you start to venture into what exactly Agile is. So now I'd like the panel to introduce themselves. So James, if you would start.
Yeah, John, thank you. I'm Dennis Meyer. I am Chief Marketing Officer in Business Development for Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, Cerisi. It is a large law firm here in Minneapolis. We have 6 offices, 700 employees, and 225 attorneys. I've been in the legal industry for 4 months, and I'm their first Chief Marketing Business Development Officer, as they're experiencing what does a CMO do, and I'm new to the law industry. Prior to that, I was with a large architectural engineering firm, professional services organization, and prior to that, with a large printing company in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm James Gagliardi, Vice President of Product and Innovation for Digital River, responsible for Digital River's overall product strategy for our 3 lines of business. We've got an e-commerce business, a payments business, and a digital marketing agency business. We do business in 243 of the 249 countries and territories all around the world. Essentially, the only ones we don't do business in are the 6 embargoed countries that we're prohibited from doing business with. Last year, we processed about $30 billion in transactions globally, and we have many customers, enterprise-level customers that you're likely familiar with: Microsoft, Samsung, Lenovo, Acer, Ticketmaster, Spotify, and many others, in enabling them to sell direct-to-consumer as our business.
Kimberly, Kupiecki. I am the Global Director of Marketing Communications for Dow Chemicals Energy and Water Solutions Group as of last week, so that's why my title might be a little different in the program. So Energy and Water Solutions is a group of businesses focused on those markets, representing about $2 billion of the $60 billion that is Dow Chemical, roughly 3,000 employees, and focused on lots of advanced technologies for water treatment, filtration, purification, separation, also antimicrobial control, and materials and catalysts and such that will go into energy, hydrocarbon processing, but also alternative energy as well. So that is my scope.
I'm Rick Dow, Chief Marketing Officer at Bring Me the News. To our audience, we like to consider ourselves a better state of news, delivering news where they want it, how they want it. And to our sponsors, we are a content marketing and social marketing platform.
And Shelly.
Hi, Shelly Nelson.
No, you want to try that one in the back?
Hello.
There we go.
Hi, Shelly Nelson. I'm VP of Marketing for Cambria. Cambria is a local Minnesota company, family-owned, American-made, natural quartz surfacing, countertops, tiles, walls. Frankly, if you can think of a really cool place to put a non-porous, beautiful surface, we will figure out how to get it there. But it's our factory's down in southern Minnesota. The company's about 12 years old, so it's relatively new, but growing and vibrant company in that surfacing industry. Before that, I've been in marketing here in Minnesota for about 18 years. So I spent a little time at Super Value in the grocery industry, and then at an agency downtown. So
we have a great mix, both B2C, B2B, different industries, and different people that I now get to put on the spot for a little fun. And there is a question and answer period in a few minutes, so if people are thinking of questions, definitely jot them down, and we'll come back and get you guys to help us out with some of the questions. So, Agile was a track today, it was track 3. And as I've learned the definition the last year, it's come out of IT, but I'm curious what the panel thinks the real definition of marketing Agile is. Who wants to go first? Rick?
Well, 2 things come to mind. First, it's not an adjective. It's actually a thing. It's a process. And I think that's one of the things that gets confusing to people is that if I say I'm agile, it means I can react quickly, differently, faster. But you can only do that if you have the thing, which is a process and a culture that enables you to act more responsibly, act more quickly on things, and to be faster. You actually don't work faster, which is nice, but you are faster.
Yeah, I would even go to say, I don't know if it's necessarily faster, but more effective in your role. Ultimately, again, to add on to that, I mean, it really is a rigorous process. There's talk of, well, do I need a plan? Do I need a process? Well, it's about having a long-term vision and strategy, right? And putting together a set of tasks, tools, and processes to be able to adapt to the market conditions.
And I would just add that, overlaying the process is a mindset that says, we don't have all the answers. I know where I want to go, got the long-term plan, but I don't have all the answers. I have to get into the environment in order to learn and apply what I'm learning to the next step.
Actually was chatting with a few of you today, and someone referred to it as a Christmas tree. I hadn't heard that one before. So a Christmas tree, if you think of iterative planning, you can bounce back and forth, but you have to be going towards the point. And if you don't have the point, you're just bouncing around. Right? So if you're moving up on the Christmas tree, that's agile. If you're just guessing, that's what we do on our bad days probably. Question for the group then, we'll move on. Now, you each run marketing organizations, different sizes, different industries, but I'm hoping each of you can give me an example of how are you using Agile today differently, as now is a buzzword, but what are you doing different today than a year ago that relates to Agile? Why don't we start on the end, we'll go down.
Yeah, today probably an example, we were doing supply chain management, and if anybody remembers MP3 players when they were popular, we went to Best Buy and they were sourcing and distributing the MP3 player into their stores, and it took about 6 months. Our company went to Best Buy and said, if we can do it in 6 weeks, would that be of value to you? Well, it was worth millions of dollars, and what we ended up doing was testing, and we did the sourcing, and we did the assembly in Asia, and instead of distributing to the traditional distribution centers, we went directly to the retail sites. And we were able to reduce their cycle time. So it was actually understanding the client's business, what brought value to the client, and being able to replicate that with our organization and the resources that we have.
I think I was going to say, I think another way to think about it too is just opportunity, and always being open, a little bit what you said, being open and ready to jump on whatever opportunities present themselves in your way as well. And I used to work in retail. I always thought, man, nothing can move faster than retail. And I came to the countertop industry and kind of thought, oh, this is going to be slow and steady, and but it doesn't matter what industry you're in, retail or hard surfaces or consumer packaged goods, anything like that. You have to be just ready to jump on whatever opportunity presents itself in your space. And if you don't, someone else will. And I know that we've all experienced that. If you sit back and rest on your laurels and are just kind of going with what you did a year ago, you won't exist in another year. That's the way marketing is these days. It's fast-paced, and you have to stay on top of these things, and you have to be ready to react and ready to take advantage of whatever gets thrown your way. It's all about seeing that advantage and then jumping on it.
I had a similar experience because I have been in retail, I've been in fast food, it's fast in its name, and airline business, which were tumultuous and had this sense that I had, adopted a culture that was quick and reactive. And to John's point, when I got to Bring Me the News, it was really an eye-opener because two things happened, and I think this was, to my mind, the essence of how it works, is that if you think about what we are, most of us are, not I particularly, but journalists, right? And journalism is what? It's real time. And there's a sense that, well, no, we're going to find out now, right? And that was married with our digital partner, Go-Kart Labs, and they are very much Agile natives. So they gave us the process to push this urgency into, which to your point was about quick to relevance, quick to solutions, and being more nimble. But so it was the cultural thing and the awakening, and then this process, which is what fueled it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, so in our line of business, we're a B2B2C, so we're selling into large enterprise companies, enabling them to sell direct to consumer. And so from a product perspective, one of the things that we did was we actually removed the workflow system built into our platform, because traditionally, again, waterfall from you do this activity and then you have somebody review it, and then it goes through this process, and then it goes through this process, and then it's finally live. Right? And in this real-time world, responding to different conditions, it's, no, we're going to make this change, we're going to push it live. If it needs to be iterated over, we can do that. So in that case, we actually removed something that had been just historically kind of built into the business itself. From our business and marketing to our customers, one of the things that we've done is we moved our development organization to Agile about 2.5 years ago. And so, so we started to move into the Agile pods, bringing people together, your QA, your development, your project managers, even product marketing, into those groups to facilitate the daily scrums and backlogs and all the activities that go into the processes. Well, that wasn't necessarily aligned to our overall corporate marketing. And so once the organization saw the benefits of these pods together and the collaboration and the communication that was happening over there, we started to see in the adopt many of those same things. Let's tear down the cubes and put in desks, put in the whiteboards right there in that common area. So people still have their own space, and now they're able to work together. The creative, the copywriting, the demand gen, all of those people sitting together, working on the campaigns. We've laid out the overall strategy. Digital River's marketing tenets is global growth and expert. So everything we do then is going and saying, all right, how can we capitalize on those? What makes up each one of those elements? And then as an opportunity comes up, so we say growth. Well, that's getting into new markets. It's speed to revenue. It's whatever the different items are underneath them. And then we can come together when an opportunity comes out to say, hey, let's tweet on that. Then next week, let's expand on that and create a blog post on that. And then the week after that, let's go and build an article and a video and training and attend a conference and get, put a media buy out, et cetera, et cetera.
James, you said the word scrum?
Scrum.
Okay, will you define for everyone what a scrum is?
So in Agile development, there's a handful of tenets that are key. One of those is the backlog. First starting with the user stories. So you have to look at those and say, from a user perspective, what am I trying to solve? So as this type of user, what am I trying to get and for what reason? So you build out these user stories, you put those on Post-it notes or online, right, in a forum there. And then you end up, again, all towards a specific end goal of what you're trying to achieve for the customer or for your buyer, your user, whoever it is. And you put yourself in those shoes, right? Customer comes first, back to the mindset example. And then you've got your backlog of activities. What are we going to do today to move that forward again? Let's come up with a handful of tweets that we want to do. Let's come up with the blog posts and the whatever. And you put together a 2-week sprint of activities that you want to achieve. Ultimately, the goal of all of this is to have something tangible on some regular cadence. In our case, it's every 2 weeks. to have some set of deliverables, again, whether that's blog posts or media buys or whatever it is. And then what we do is we have a daily meeting, and that daily stand-up meeting, the 15-minute meeting, is the scrum. You bring everybody together that's actually involved in getting things done, and then you work through and go around the room to say, what did you do yesterday, or what have you completed since the last time we met, which is typically the day before? What are you working on now, and what blockers are in your way from getting something done? That's ultimately what you're trying to do. And you do that day over day over day until you reach that end point, say again, in our case, every 2 weeks. And then you have kind of the meeting that brings everybody together and say, what is the output that we created? And then we iterate over it.
Kimberly, we didn't get to you yet.
Sure, so I'm just like, what was the original question? And I think it was, how is Agile impacting?
How is it in your day-to-day in Dow? How is it impacting your
it's making us quite uncomfortable, I'd say. You know, we're a 100-year-old company. I come from the agency side, so I worked with Edelman for a number of years, and they're on the forefront of all of this, and James, what you're describing sounds to me a lot like what we call the creative newsroom, which I'm starting to implement at Dow as well. But it's very new and different, and if you think about the areas you know, our businesses are operating in, think of the utility industry, right? Agile doesn't come to mind when you think the utility industry. So, you know, I came in and so far I think my whole job has been change management. So, but I'm happy to say that we are building the machine, we're pulling it together, and I think of this from a crawl, walk, run standpoint. And right now we're crawling, but people they're excited. We are starting to try new things. We're doing things differently. Instead of going off to the ivory tower and figuring out the perfect answer, we're saying, okay, we have 2 ideas. Instead of arguing and debating about those ideas, let's throw them both out. Let's put them both out to our audiences and see what the response is. Okay, we learned something. Let's iterate. So we're starting the baby steps. So that's how we're changing.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth mentioning that not every project is conducive to Agile, right? I mean, if you're doing things that are related to regulatory compliance, right? It's not a test and learn type of process that you're going to go through.
Now, I learned about Agile, we shared this story among us. I was in an IT meeting, we were implementing some new marketing technology, and I asked an IT person, who will go unnamed, who's not in the room, probably blind, but they're not in the room. I said, can I see the game plan for this, or can I see the project plan? And they said, no, it's Agile. And I went, wait. Agile means no plan at all? And that's where the definition started to come in of, okay, I don't know what Agile is, but I don't like it. Because I wasn't able to corner them into what we needed to get done for marketing. But to your point, and James, to build upon that, if Agile's so great, why aren't we using it on every project we all work on? Why, what are the barriers within your organizations? And you were selected for this because you're marketing leaders, you run great marketing organizations, but why not use it every day on every project besides the reason James gave?
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of people in organizations that are scared of it because it does feel so fast moving. And I had this plan. There's a lot of people that they love their plan. And especially once you get outside of the marketing department too, and you get into your other stakeholders within your business, I used to be in the agency world, so, it's easier in a place like that where everybody's sort of, frankly, young and, fast moving and whatever, but right, then you get into more of like a CPG world or manufacturing world, and other folks in other departments look at you like you're an alien on a daily basis, I mean, you're just different, right? So depending on your company, but, so I think there's a bit of that as well, and then I think some of it's just human nature too. I don't know about you guys, but I've almost come to hate email. Because it used to be this fast thing. It used to be sort of like the definition of Agile, 10 to 15 years ago. And now I get so many emails that you just sort of get numb to them and you have to try to find a way to sort through it. I personally would much rather have a conversation with someone, and that to me is, I think in my world, it's more of the definition of Agile. And I always tell my team, if you have something really hot, for God's sakes, don't email it to me. Come find me. We're not that big of a group. Walk down the hall. Let's talk. Let's get on this. Let's make a plan. Let's, and so it's a bit like the old newsroom of the old days too, right? Let's let's really get on this and see what we can do, and clear the decks for a minute here, because this is really important. You have to decide what's important, what's worth that. But I just love the personal interaction. I'd much rather pick up the phone and talk to someone, or walk down the hall and talk to someone and have that face-to-face. And it's kind of like what you talked about too. When I was at one of my other companies, we had an open work environment as well, where there's no cubes and everyone just sat out at tables, and people would always say to me, how do you get anything done? And I said, I loved it, the energy, and I felt like I was so much more productive because people would just walk up and talk to you for 5 minutes on something they would have, in maybe more of a cube environment, they wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, and they'd plan a half-hour meeting, and it would be kind of a big waste of time. When you really just needed 5 minutes to quick, make some eye contact, talk about an idea, and get it going, and make some plans and move. So that's I think one of the things that I love about it.
Other people on barriers to implement. Why not do it on every project in your company right now?
I think Ken made a very good point. It can be discomforting, and because it's much more open and at first appearance more vulnerable, because it's actually much more accountable, because you're accountable to yourself in a group, and it's transparent, and that can be unnerving. I mean, change itself is, but then when you think that, holy cow, I'm going to be in front of this room, they're going to ask me what I did yesterday, I'm going to do today, and that's a very big change. And organizations have been oftentimes acclimated to a sense of accountability defined as, well, I told them, I sent it to them, right? But not about actually whether you yourself collaborated to move something forward. So it's really quite different. And I've noticed that and that was the other thing I noticed at Bring Me the News, is those that are there, made that, they love it. They love it because it is like that, it's open, and ideas pop, but that first step, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think for us, it's partly almost org design. I mean, that this company was, I think this would be so much easier for a startup or a new group, but with a company that's been, built based on the old model, you actually need different roles, different skill sets, different ways you work together, different business processes as well. So the tools are there, the technology's there, it's fantastic, we're using it, we're working with it. But there's sort of this underlying gap that we're working on at the same time that says, okay, how do we need to work as human beings with all this to make it work and to get the real benefit from it?
Yeah, I would say that the budgeting process is not necessarily, that's a prohibitor in our case, where it's, you're doing yearly budgeting, and you're going to say, okay, I need X amount of dollars for these sets of activities, and that doesn't necessarily come across as an agile process. And ultimately, in our case, and I'm sure it's this way in many, right? You take from one pool and you use it on something else, but ultimately that's one where it's, hey, we've got to set budget $100,000 to go on this. And now, because of market conditions or something else, we want to, or what we've learned from the last iteration, we want to divert some of that to these other activities. And then you have to go through the process with the finance department to adjust those budget dollars, right? Or POs that have already been submitted, and I want to pull those back. So there's, finance is a big kind of prohibitor to some of that.
I just, to build on that, James, I just went through a process of building the annual marketing plan, and it's what I've done for years. And I think I'm pretty good at it. And I got it done, and I was like, ooh, this is not the way to do it. For the same reason. And we've actually moved to another process, many people may be doing it in this terms called traction. And it has both, it has a concurrency of understanding what your annual objectives are, what you're going to achieve in the next 90 days, and what you're going to do this week. So it kind of organizes in a way that might be compatible. But I'll tell you, in my view, the annual plan is the enemy of agility. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's not that one. That's my view.
Is Agile faster, team? Does Agile and doing Agile, does that mean that you're going to get to the top of the Christmas tree to that point necessarily faster?
I would say I just think it's smarter. It's learning to make decisions more efficiently and more effectively. know, and making a decision, evaluating a situation, and moving on. I agree with you on the budgeting thing. We sort of, the word budget is not used at my organization. We talk about it as an investment plan, and we talk about it because we don't ever want a budget to be limiting. We set an investment plan, and we use that as a guide through the year, but we never want to hear that whole statement around, well, I would have done it, but it would have put me over budget. Like, that should never be a reason for not executing a good idea. If you have an idea that comes up and whatever it costs, we should evaluate it based on its own merit, even if it wasn't budgeted for, and then we'll figure out how to get the investment for it at that point if we really think it's a strong idea. But I think that mindset really helps to be more agile from that standpoint.
If we circle back to one of the earlier questions, we talked about how we're using the organization. Does anyone have a specific project? Like there was one example about getting to market faster, which I thought was really powerful. Anyone else have one? We used it for budgeting, for online, for distribution. Anyone have any other really specific projects that they've made where they've used the process?
Well, it was the foundation of our growth plan last year into this year. And the combination of the process itself and the culture of immediacy that we had with this discipline that Go-Kart Labs afforded us allowed us to do some amazing, at least from my perspective, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. So we would spend $100 to learn how to spend $2,000, and we'd start with 100 and we'd end up with 12. And then the next month it would be others. But it was because we had metrics. We had the ability to measure them quickly and then act nimbly. So it's in the Scrum every day, how do we do, and we changed and shift it. And it was the most, I've been around a lot of marketing activities, but it was the most remarkable efficiency of effort that then allowed us, when we got done spending, frankly, to pivot to a socially driven, people-managed event that was an accelerant. And I don't think we could have done that in a conventional sense of, well, we're going to lay this thing out 2 months later. Well, that didn't work, So that was a real experience that I can coalesce my sense of what it is.
We had a tagline that was called how we make it faster, easier, more profitable, taking your products to market. I've used that filter across 4 different industries. And if you look at those 3 things of how do you make it faster, because that's what's driving a lot of our industries and our services, how do you make it easier, and how do you make it more profitable or more efficient? And when you apply that to architectural engineering, they say, oh, well, we don't want it to be faster or easier because they pay us by the hour to design. But the clients want it faster, easier, and they want it efficient. So when you apply that across your industry, all of a sudden you begin to align with the clients and what's really driving their business. And any one of those 3, if you take that to your client and say, this is what we're going to help you do, you will have their attention.
Well, we're going to move into the Q&A, so I want to give everyone a quick heads up. First, an audience check. Is table or is track 3 sharing their chocolate or not? No, somebody's... Okay, well, I'll ask again. They should share. And does everyone have your drink ticket? Everyone know where it is? Okay, so I'd love to, one of the things I'd love to bring up, and we're going to jump back in at the end here to a few more questions for me, but I'd love to open it up to questions from the room. And again, we have a very approachable, friendly panel here, so questions that Jack will help us with, but anyone have a question? We don't have bags of chocolate. We've got one right back there. No t-shirt gun.
My question is, has anyone of you, when you use Agile within your marketing organization, ever got the customer into the process?
All the time. Yeah, all the time. Actually, agility is all about aligning yourself with your client and what their needs are. One of the questions that came up earlier was any suggestions in the next generation of how to be more agile. And what came to mind was be on a first-name basis with every one of your clients. Because if you understand their business and what they're trying to do, you will be agile.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's not about solving your problems, it's about solving their problems. And we just recently had a customer advisory board, so we brought in 25 of our clients into our facility for 2 days. And one of the tracks that we went through was actually showing our media campaigns to attract new customers and getting their response. These are our customers already. Does this resonate with you? Again, global growth expert, speed, new markets, global expert, to validate whether or not they thought that the message that we were conveying is actually the brand promise they thought that their message that we were conveying is actually the brand promise.
From running work, I've never had the client involved, so from running work, I've never.
We're in the crawl phase, but we have a project where we'll be doing that shortly. We're in the crawl phase, but we have a.
At some level, I will add on. At some level, you are here. At some level, I will add on. Through Facebook and Twitter, you are here. LinkedIn, like other places, providing feedback to you in those LinkedIn and other places providing.
Great question. Other questions from the room? Great question. Other questions from the room?
A couple of questions. First of all, a couple of questions. Measured Agile and first productivity results compared to more traditional project management, product management type things compared to more traditional methodologies. And then, if Agile is great, methodologies. And then, do you see Agile educators, like University of St. Thomas is represented here, do you see beginning to school in Agile versus certificates in project management in Agile?
I would answer the first. Actually, I have a stat or two here for you. I would answer the first. I had a similar question myself when Forbes undertook a survey of CMOs, and they were asking them a certain set of needs. So here are two of them. CMOs at large were asked, so do you feel you need to increase your speed in marketing? CMOs at large, 80% said yes. Do you feel you need to increase your speed in another group they asked, which were Agile CMOs, they had adopted another group they asked, which were whether Agile marketing and increasing their speed to market. 93% said yes. Agile marketing and increasing their speed to market. And this gets to something that James said, which I think is largely at the heart of this about, and this is something that James said, which I think increasing relevance. You brought that same thing. 89% of CMOs said, yes, we want to increase relevance, it's critical to us. 89% of CMOs, and of those that have employed Agile marketing, 80% said they've accomplished it. And of those that have I think that's pretty good evidence for those that have the experience. And in my judgment, it's not it's pretty good evidence, it's how you get there. And how you get there in terms of how quickly you can get, it's how you and as a cautionary tale, I think you need I think you need someone like James, because if again, it's not an adjective, it's a thing, it's a process. And again, if you try to make it up, it's a thing, it's a process. You're going to not be in a happy place. If you try to make it up.
Second part of your question was around education. Was the opposite of education. Second part of your question was around education. It seems when education is moving more quickly to adopt new tactics. So I think the project management Six Sigma in all of the areas, tactics constraints, it's fine with that. It seemed to move faster, but I've heard nothing about it in academia yet. It's fine with that. It seemed to move faster, but I have not heard of anything yet. Training courses, it's just a couple books that are out, and not a lot on the web. And even as we do researching, that's a couple books that are out, and a lot on the web. And some of the forums. But some of the other groups are probably doing a lot of crowdsourcing or applying it because they're digital natives. Some of the legacy of probably not so much digital natives. Some of the legacy. Other questions from the group? These are great. A couple more would be helpful. We've got one, Jack, middle of that. Questions from the group? These are great.
I gotta be that done.
We've got one, Jack, quick of that.
I gotta be that done. Get closer.
You're quick.
There's a happy hour guy back here. Get closer.
So you talked about how great it is to leverage Agile marketing, but I wonder if you guys can think of a time where you tried and it didn't. I wonder if you guys can think of a time where you tried and it didn't work with that.
I picked too good a panel. I actually have an example, which is again a big joke why I'm not on the panel. We had examples where it was touched on before where we were starting rapid development. I would call it, I wasn't calling it Agile time, but I was calling it rapid development. Starting rapid development, the daily stand-up, where are you at, moving quickly, we would have a 1-hour meeting, the daily stand-up, where are you at, 15-minute quickly, touch bases, 1 hour meeting. Half the team just wouldn't do it. And there was just, they wouldn't, half the team, they weren't in revolt or anything, but it was just, you could just see they wouldn't adopt that type of revolt. So I think similar to what Shelly said and Kimberly said, it just wasn't going to move them. And so with that team, it was just not going to be successful. It just wasn't going to move them. And again, that was before I was calling it Agile, but it was a form of project management. That was rapid development, that was every day. Iterations, it had very much the same tenets. Rapid development, that was every day. Iterations.
I have an example, and I think it was probably more cultural. I have an example. We can be quite agile and do lots of probably more cultural interesting things in driving, but all of a sudden when you have culture or an industry things that isn't that's agile, it'll shut it down. Or industry. But also what happens is you end up being agile enough to be able to kind of, but also what happens is you end up being agile enough to influence the change agents within the organization in order to be able to drive some of that change. But I would say it's probably more of a cultural issue to be able to drive some of it. I would say it's probably more of a
I would say a slightly different thing from a software development standpoint. I would say a slightly different thing from a software development standpoint. Further behind the schedule than some cases preferred. From a marketing perspective, I think that there's a mindset that needs to also be built into the Agile methodology. There's a mindset this likely will fit into the Agile, and what are we going to do to respond to that? This is also another component of this. So we've certainly put out campaigns that we thought would be successful. So we've certainly and then you iterate and adapt to that and try new things. So we ultimately go out and iterate, do the A/B test that, and try to iterate. So we ultimately go out. The first time you go out, it probably isn't going to work, right? Or some aspect to go out. And part of that is then you have to look at your own customers and say, are they willing to accept some level of failure? We've all seen social media things that have some tarnished an image of a company because of something they were trying to do, responding to something they were trying to news event or something like that. And so you have to have a set of customers that are willing to accept that. So you have to have a set of customers that are willing to accept that you're not going to hit the mark.
We got one up front. Good. Everyone keep Jack on the move. So we've got to spread them out.
Time for a couple more.
Everyone keep Jack on the move. So we've got to spread them out.
Time for maybe more appropriate for some of the larger company scenarios. What are your thoughts on how to champion and expand this sort of thing? In a way, your thoughts on how education. It seems like in a way we see a future for internalizing the education in some sense to bring that cultural transformation as an entirely internal and maybe a piggyback question is around the level of sponsorship you have and how that's being made. Assuming you can reveal that.
Yeah, that's so my world. So my plan at the moment is to demonstrate what this can look like. So I'm looking for what this sort of contained example so that I can go and say, look, this is how it works. If you do it this way, I probably wouldn't use the word agile. This is how it works. That marketing mumbo jumbo. Do it this way. But I would say, okay, here's how we took this different approach. Here's how we learned and iterated. Here's how it turned into value for the business. Here's how we learned and iterated. I'm putting together, and I'm really close to at least 2 of those that I'm going to shop around a little more and say, let's do more of this, let's try more of this. At the same time, I'm building the machine, if you will. And every day I'm rolling the boulders up the hill, and I run into procurement where they say, wait a minute, that contract response from this group. Why the heck are you chasing this down? This isn't your goals. Or, well, then I got to work through all of that. And so I'm traveling around, I'm working hard, making friends as best I can, understanding what folks want to do and how I can help. So I really want as many people on my side as possible. So it's really a lot of relationship building internally, a lot of negotiating, a lot of sort of softly showing, what about this, what if we try that, and then what about this, what if we try that. Sometimes it's painful. I also wanted to add in terms of budgeting, changing how we allocate dollars and removing them from some places and putting them in others. For example, physical trade show events. We spend lots and lots of money on these big physical purchases, and I took a step back and said, let's start at zero and say, what are we trying to get out of this? Who's the audience? What's the right engagement? What are we trying to get out of this? It's not always going to be a big, expensive, right? You can take those dollars and they stretch a lot further in a lot of the other digital capabilities. So, it's been painful, but what I've tried so far has been successful in the sense that, we get good feedback from the customers and it's impossible to argue against that. So I'm really looking for the feedback from the customers and the business results to show that we can do more of this and we want to stretch it across other businesses and grow it and scale it. That's my plan.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question of all of us. So, why were you all the panelists that we use in our marketing organizations in some degree? But as senior marketing people in our marketing managers team will report to a CEO or president of the organization. So I can say from my perspective, we're using it as marketing down. I don't have confidence today, and we're using it as management team in a position, and I don't have any confidence that we're using it across the management team. That as a management team, you can play. I don't have any confidence in the marketing department. Rick, you gave the example, it sounds like you adopted it between bringing the news and go hard. Cory, you gave the example, it sounds like you adopted it. Anyone thinking, is there any chance of using it at the management level at this point? Anyone thinking, is there any chance of using it at the management level?
I think it is easier to your point. Because I worked a lot with General Mills, I think it is easier like that, so I've seen that side of it. I think it is easier when you work at a smaller company, and Rick's in a similar situation where you're working for an entrepreneur, and in that situation, it's expected, and it comes from the top, and I wake up every day going, oh my God, what's he going to think of today, and I got to be on top of this guy. I wake up every day going, that's what happens when you work for an entrepreneur. They're always thinking of creative things, and the nice thing is that it gets instilled throughout our entire organization, and is expected at every level.
Yeah, originally, when we first approached the executive team on doing agile development, initially, they were all on board because agile went faster. They did things faster. They were all on board. So there was an initial, yes, go do it, right? And then there was this kind of deflating period, right? The trough was going through it to say, well, it's actually not faster necessarily, but it's more effective. Well, ultimately, now we're at a spot in the company where it doesn't matter how you get it done, as long as you're showing the right results. It doesn't matter how we're at today, as long as it's your organization. So any functional area can do it in your organization, as long as they're showing the right functional area.
Dennis, any chance of using it upwards?
In supply chain, yes.
Dennis, any chance of using it upwards?
John, I think we've come to the end for
I would like to take a minute for thank you to the panel.